Hello there. My name is Jasom Jensai. Welcome to this live stream where we're going to be discussing The Force Awakens, and that's it this time. Sorry, only one topic this week, but it's a fun topic, so enjoy the show. Before we get into The Force Awakens, though, the question of the stream is who is the first Chancellor of the New Republic? So, just to lay out the rules for the question of the stream, if you get it right, you get 10 points, but you have to be the first person to get it. You only get one guess, and you can't look it up. Even though I can't really enforce the not looking it up rule. Just don't look it up. Thank you. So the question of the stream, who is the first Chancellor of the New Republic? It's revealed in, I don't know how many books it's revealed in. Pretty much most of the Aftermath trilogy, I guess, probably mentions it. What is it called? Bloodline with Leia. I don't know. There's a bunch of books that mention it. So yeah, if you know the answer, or if you have a guess, I guess, it's not too hard of a guess, I suppose. So if you've seen the original trilogy, you might be able to guess. So leave your guesses or your answers in the chat or in the comments if you're watching not live. But with that, let's move on to The Force Awakens. So this is a review of The Force Awakens. Just watched it, enjoyed it. It's a good movie. Just my overall thoughts on it. It's kind of the start of. I haven't made it super big of a secret, but then again, I haven't really covered it on this channel yet. I'm not the biggest fan of the sequels. I can enjoy them as movies, but there's parts of them that really frustrate me. And The Force Awakens sets up a lot of those things. Maybe not a lot of those. Most of those are set up by The Last Jedi, and then I'll get to those the next couple of weeks, or the next 4 weeks. But The Force Awakens does set up some things that I don't really like, but at the same time, the beginning of the movie is really cool, and it actually, when it first came out, there was like so much room for theories and all that stuff, and that was really entertaining. Unfortunately, because the rest of the trilogy didn't go the way that The Force Awakens seemed to be setting up, none of the threads that people were super curious about were really that interesting, I guess. A lot of that, the best parts of The Force Awakens, that being the mystery, is just kind of not that cool. That's my overall thoughts on it, but let's get into the specifics. So it starts out with, the First Order flying over, I think it's Ilum. It's a snow planet. I don't really know which one. Or not. Ilum, yes, Starkiller Base is probably the more accurate, I don't know. You know what I mean. It's Ilum / Starkiller Base. I don't know for sure, though, because I didn't see the ring, but it's the only snow planet in the movie. I don't know. Maybe it's just a random planet in the Jakku system. But anyways, it sends out these little things or the ships with the stormtroopers, and it's got to start in space. Basically, is why it's there. But really, it starts on Jakku with Bb8 and Poe Dameron, and it introduces Poe Dameron as this awesome pilot, as you see in the title crawl. Bb8 is, I love BB8. Okay, let's talk about Bb8's design for just a second. He's like a ball with the head attached to it, and the ball rolls, and the head is staying on top, but because the ball is rolling, it moves, and oh my goodness, that is such a cool design. It's so creative. It's so unique. It's so Star Wars too. Whoever designed BB8 or whoever helped design BB8 or anyone who helped with BB8, and not just the design. I'll get to more of BB8 later, but good job. That is just incredible, and it's one of the best parts of the sequels. A lot of people say oh, Kylo Ren is the best character in the sequels. BB8 might just be the best character in the sequels for me. He's very enjoyable. He's very, very Star Wars to me. He just feels like a Star Wars droid. But then we meet Poe Dameron, and he also feels like a good Star Wars character. He's kind of daring, we'll get to see more of him later. But they introduce basically the mystery of where did Luke Skywalker go. And this is part of. At this point in the movie, it's totally fine. Because, Luke Skywalker being gone, there's a lot of reasons why he could be gone. Then after that, First Order shows up, and we get basically the introduction of Kylo Ren and the First Order, and it's pretty good. There is one major critique I have, and that is the stormtroopers are back. Um, like, why is it? I suppose the clone troopers were in the prequels, the stormtroopers were in the sequels, so they assumed that stormtroopers would go in the, or excuse me, stormtroopers in the originals. Let's put stormtroopers in the sequels too. But I don't think I just wish they hadn't, and I'll get to more of this later, but I just wish they hadn't just copied all of the same designs like X-Wings and TIE Fighters, Stormtroopers. It's the Rebellion versus the Empire all over again. And that's where I think The Force Awakens copying A New Hope is like at its worst for me. Because a lot of the critique of The Force Awakens, as you probably know, is that it's a copy of Episode 4. And sure, that's somewhat the case. It starts in space. You've got young Force sensitive growing up on Tatooine, meeting a mentor character. The mentor character gets killed by the main bad guy, like Kylo Ren is Vader, Rey is Luke, Han Solo is Obi-Wan. You've got a Death Star, but bigger. Oh no. And you've got X-Wings going to blow it up. Like, people say it's just a copy, but like, really, it's quite a bit different. Rey is a very different character. She's got much different motivations. Han Solo is a lot different than Obi-Wan. Kylo Ren is much different than Vader. Bb8 is, he's R2D2, I guess. I can't really say much there. Yeah, like there's no Leia. I guess Rey took on the role of Leia somewhat, and Finn took on some of it. But yeah, it's not quite the same. There is a lot of similarities, but it's not a blatant copy. But where The Force Awakens does copy is with its world building, which that's where you don't want to copy. Like, I mean, sure, don't copy the plot beat by beat, which Force Awakens got pretty close to anyways, but definitely don't copy the world building if it's been 30 years. Why is the Rebellion still using X-Wings? Why is the Millennium Falcon still around? I get it, that's nostalgia. But like, why are there Stormtroopers? Why are there TIE Fighters? Why are there Star Destroyers? Okay, Star Destroyers maybe I can accept because, I mean, what it's a triangle. Like, a triangle is not that original. But I mean, maybe don't have the bridge in the same spot. Maybe like move it down so it's not such a weak spot. I don't know. You just evolve your designs. Don't just copy everything. And then even going so far as the Death Star is there. Like Han Solo has all the great lines in this movie. He's like, that's not how the Force works, and I'll get to that later. He's like, it's the Death Star, but bigger. And I don't remember his exact line, but basically he said, it's basically just the Death Star, and there's always a way to blow it up, and blah, blah, blah. He's basically saying, we've seen this thing before. And I agree with that completely. Yeah, so moving on, though, to Kylo Ren's introduction. I thought that was great. He talks to Lorsan Tekka. Lorsan Tekka is like, basically saying, hey, remember who your parents are. Like, come on, dude. You're not a killer. You know who your parents are. Like, know your lineage. And Kylo Ren is like, you're so right. And I don't remember the exact lines, but basically, Lorsan Tekka is referencing like Luke and Han and Leia, and trying to get Kylo Ren to, I guess, not do something evil, like kill him, right? But Kylo Ren is like, basically like, yeah, but I'm also Vader's son, or Vader's grandpa, or I'm getting it all mixed up. I'm Vader's grandson, and so then he's gonna kill him. Yeah, so that was a great scene. I love that. And then there's the Force Freeze. That's a very unique power. Never seen anything. Well, I can't even say that. We've seen things like that. We've seen telekinesis, and this is the big thing with the Force. If you're gonna introduce a new power, you shouldn't be like, wow, I've never seen anything like that, because it's the same. It's the Force. It's the same power giving you those abilities, so the abilities should be similar. So we've seen telekinesis. Why not Force Freeze? It totally makes sense. It's awesome. I like that ability. It's a great addition to the franchise. And then there's also the Mind Probe, which is kind of similar to just general mind reading, kind of similar to mind tricks, all that kind of stuff. It's a natural extension of the powers we've seen before. It's not like, oh, we've never seen anything like that. It's like, yeah, we've seen stuff like that, and this is a new thing. It's awesome. It makes sense. It's great. yeah, but there's some. Again, I won't talk about these too much now, but there's some other stuff in the sequels that it's like we've never seen anything like that. How can you do this? It's not the Force way. Um, but yeah, so moving on from like the first 10 minutes of the movie. How long have I been going? 10 minutes. Yeah, okay. So I'm going at about. We should be done in an hour and 50 minutes at this rate, assuming I like the rest of the movie as much as this part. But anyways, then we meet Finn, or I don't remember. Basically, yes, we see that Finn is, I guess, being conflicted, and this is such a good idea. I love the idea of a stormtrooper turned good, but I think they handled it all wrong. Um, like Finn is he's a very unique character. He's not very brave, which I guess makes a little bit of sense. He's not very like he's comic relief. How can you make the stormtrooper who turned good comic relief? He should be like a Bucky. Like I just watched Winter Soldier and Falcon, whatever that show's called. I watched the second episode of that uh, earlier today, and like Bucky would be a great example of what someone who like betrayed his programming should look like. Like he's kind of dark. He's got PTSD and stuff. I'm assuming he's got bad dreams at least. I'm not sure what the like official definition of PTSD and stuff is. But like he shouldn't be comic relief. And you can do it in like a awkward kind of way, like he just doesn't understand like being around humans, I guess. Like it's a little bit awkward, but like the way that Poe or Finn is, like it doesn't fit with his backstory. So I think they really did Finn a disservice with the execution of his character, but the idea is great of a stormtrooper who breaks his programming, and his chemistry with Poe is really good. Like, I mean, he's like, "I'm gonna get you out of here. It's a rescue," and Poe's like, "You need a pilot, don't you?" And Finn's like, "Yeah, I need a pilot," and then it's great. Um, the dynamic between those two is really really good. Like Finn doesn't seem incompetent next to Poe, but he does seem like inexperienced and terrified, which makes sense because he's inexperienced and he should be terrified. Um, Meanwhile, Poe is the best pilot in the Resistance. He should not be terrified. Maybe a little bit. Maybe he should be terrified, but it's not in his nature. So, um, then you have their escape, which with the Tie Fighter, a lot of great lines in this. They come up with Finn's name. Poe's like, "I always wanted to fly one of these things," which that's a cool line. Um, yeah, just their chemistry was great. Their tactics, um, not so good in my opinion. One Tie Fighter shouldn't try and fight off a Star Destroyer. Um, like going for the cannons seems like a good idea, but like really when you think about it, it's like you really should just run. You probably shouldn't try and take out their cannons because they're gonna have a lot more cannons than you. They're gonna be able to launch ties, and then suddenly it's gonna be like 20-1, and then you're just screwed. Um, I mean, maybe with Poe Dameron you're not, but no, I'm just kidding. Poe would be destroyed in a 20-on-1. Let's be honest. Especially in a Tie Fighter, which he's never flown before, and all the Tie Fighter pilots obviously are pilots of Tie Fighters. So although he can fly a Tie Fighter, he wouldn't be as good as he would in the X-wing. So realistically, his strategy should be to get away. That brings up an interesting question. Do TIE fighters have hyperdrives? Because they don't during the time of the Empire, but they do during the time of the Rise of Skywalker. If they do, then run away and come back and get BB-8 some other way. I'm sure he can survive. You need a rescue team. But yeah, I don't know. The space combat in this movie, I feel like, wasn't very good. Um, yeah, everything they did with in terms of space combat and tracking in this movie was not good. Not including the aerial combat that they used space vehicles for during the conclusion of the movie, which I'll get to later. Yeah, moving on from that scene, you get... Actually, I missed a scene. Rey's introduction, which is another really great introduction. Like, you see her whole story, you see her motivation. There's barely any talking. It's all shown. It's not told, which like this is a perfect example of show don't tell. It's such a good scene because of the way it shows. Like it's not exposition. It's not boring. Exposition is boring. It's like don't just tell me stuff. Show me. And that's like the first rule of I guess storytelling. Maybe not the first rule, but it's a rule that gets tossed around a lot. And this scene just totally shows why it's good. And I don't even need to tell you. You know because you've seen the movie. You've been shown. I don't need to tell you. But yeah, anyways, this scene is just awesome. It explains Rey's backstory. It explains like what she does. It explains her skills, at least most of them. Um, eh. Yeah, it explains the skills that she should have as a scavenger. Then you have the scene where she finds BB-8. That's a good scene. It kind of shows. It's like I don't know if you've heard this analogy, but it's the archetypal scene where the hero like saves a dog or something. It's basically to show that the hero is a good guy because Rey is willing to save this droid who the other person doesn't care about. And that just shows that she has respect for people and she's willing to, I guess, put in her own time to help others. It shows a bit of selflessness. So it's a good scene. It does what it's meant to. Um, yeah, then moving on from there, you get Finn at the crash site and Poe dies, which if I okay, let me explain this. So I was gonna say if I remember correctly, but what I mean is if the rumors I've heard are true, and it's rumors that I've heard from like pretty. It's not like a rumor like Star Wars theories rumors where he's got like some guy in Lucasfilm. It's just something I've heard. Um, that I heard a fan once say, and I think makes sense that J.J. Abrams didn't actually intend for the character Poe Dameron to survive the crash, but when he saw like Poe Dameron's scenes, he was like, you know what, this guy's got to survive. I'm gonna put him in the later parts of the movie because he's so good, and I'm glad he's it because Poe Dameron is a great character. Like Oscar Isaac's performance is really good. He doesn't have too much of a character arc, but like just his charisma is really good. But yeah. Anyways, this that would explain why like Poe Dameron just kind of mysteriously vanishes, which I can accept that. Like it's explained he came out in a different parachute and he woke up at night and like Finn was gone, the ship was gone. It's pretty cool. Then Finn like walks around for a long time. Finally finds what it's called Nema Outpost, I think. Yeah. It's a good scene. It's kind of necessary, but it's not really super deep. It's just Finn walking. He discards his armor. Yeah. He takes Poe's jacket, which is pretty cool. He looks really good in that. It suits him, as Poe says. But then he meets Rey, and that's a very interesting scene. And I think this is where Finn's character starts to fall apart because he sees Rey, he immediately like wants to help her and trusts her and sees her as like this weak female, and it's like you can look at it one of two ways. You can see it as Finn is super weak and he's not very smart, and like he sees Rey and is just surprised that she's competent because I don't know. The other way you can look at it is the story writers are trying to preach at us that we shouldn't be like Finn and think that girls aren't very cool. Because obviously, Rey is so much more competent than Finn in this movie. And yet Finn is like constantly trying to protect her. And it's like, don't be like Finn because he's not very smart. And it's like, stop preaching at me. I'm like, why are they making Finn so stupid just to make Rey look good? And that's how I feel a lot of this movie puts Finn in. Like, he's always chasing after Rey, but why? He just met her. All he can say is like, you looked at me in a way no one ever had. And it's like, well, duh, you were in the First Order. And the other thing is, he looked at her like before she looked at him. So it's like, what gives? Your motivations are totally hollow. Like, they don't make any sense. It's hard to empathize with that, and therefore not as good of a character. At least in my opinion. I mean, if you love Finn as a character, that's great. I envy you. But yeah, I just feel like they kind of threw Finn into the trash bin as soon as he saw Rey. But yeah, Rey's their banter though is pretty good. They're so the First Order shows up, almost kills them, and they run over to the quad jump, or they're running toward the quad jumper, and I love the use of like what they show and what they, I guess, reveal in the scene where they're running towards the quad jumper, and Finn's like, "What about that one?" She's like, "That one's garbage," but you don't see it. And then they show the quad jumper get blown up, and she's like, "The garbage will do." And the camera turns, and it's the Millennium Falcon, and it's great because that one's garbage is a reference to like all the times the Millennium Falcon has been called garbage, and now it's been 30 years, and now it's definitely garbage. And yeah, it's just a great line. They get into the ship, they start flying. It's kind of a coincidence that it's there, but you know what? I accept it. It's cool. I like it. Yeah, anyways, they fly away. You've got this awesome action scene, and even though it's a bit unbelievable that Rey can fly quite that well, after all, like, she is force sensitive. She did grow up on Jakku, so she might, I guess, know how to fly for some reason. But, you know, I accept it. It's a cool scene, and their banter is really cool, so I'm willing to accept it. It's kind of like, if it's a good scene, it's easier to accept unbelievable circumstances, and in this case, I think it's explainable. Enough. It's plausible enough to where it was a good enough scene that I can accept it. Yeah, but after that, you get the scene where they have the poison gas and whatever, and it's kind of like, this is the next problem they have to overcome in this story, right? It's the next scene. That's kind of how I felt about that one. But then they actually had a bit of interesting conflict with basically just moving Rey down into the like machinery part so that Finn and BB-8 could talk about how Finn's not in the first or in the Resistance, which is another thing. Finn is like, yeah, I'm with the Resistance. Like, he was just trying to impress Rey, and it's like, it makes him look so stupid, and it's like, why do you do that? It just makes me cringe. But regardless, BB-8's banter with him was really good, especially the end with the thumbs up like lighter. I love that. It's so cool. Everything to do with BB-8 is cool. I think I said the word everything, so I have to be careful. Pretty much everything. I can't think of anything super bad. Yeah, I mean, BB-8's awesome. Like, what could go wrong with BB-8? I don't know. Leave your favorite BB-8 scene in the chat or in the comments. My favorite BB-8 scene, I don't know. There's a lot of them. Probably. Okay, you know what? Yeah, I thought of a scene I don't like with BB-8. My least favorite BB-8 scene is when he's looking at R2-D2 so that C-3PO can give some exposition about how R2-D2 has been in power, like, he's been powered off for a while. That's my least favorite scene because it's, like, obviously exposition. It's, like, barely hidden, and it's kind of just out of place. Like, why is BB-8 poking around R2? Just get on with the main part of the story. Or tie that in some way. But I don't know, my favorite scene. There's so many good ones. I would have to say right now, and it might change. Like, if you ask next stream, I'd probably say a different one. But right now, it's that thumbs up with the lighter. That's a cool scene. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones, though. But anyways, back to, I guess, the thing going in, like, chronological order, the plot. They solve the poison gas thing, and immediately they're caught by someone. And then Finn, who is part of the First Order, identifies them as First Order, which in hindsight doesn't really make sense because it's not the First Order, and he should totally recognize the First Order. And Finn is the one who suggests on fixing the poison gas problem, which is a good plan. I will give them credit for giving him at least that little bit of brilliance. But that's about all he does good in this movie, other than shooting, I guess, a couple TIE fighters, but I mean, he's got a great pilot supporting him, and he misses a lot of times too. So, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot they could have made him do better. Well, I guess he does hit Kylo in the shoulder with his lightsaber, and I guess survive his back wound, which should have killed him. But I don't know. I feel like I'll get to that fight later. There's a lot to talk about there. But yeah, anyways, Han Solo comes on, and he's like, Chewie, we're home. And it's this awesome scene. So much nostalgia. He easily finds Rey and Finn, just super simple. Yeah, and then you get the new characters exclaiming over the old characters, which I guess is fine. It's a good scene. It's fine. Yeah, after that, immediately after that, you get the Kanji Club and the something Death Gang, I think is what they're called. Basically, you get Han Solo talking his way out of everything, like he does every time. Yes, he does every time. Man, Han Solo in this movie is great. Like he shows up, and immediately the movie gets like 10 times quippier. It's so fun. Just all of his lines are great. Maybe not all of them. Most of his lines are great. But yeah, I mean, the big problem I have with this movie, and I'll probably get to this later more, is it's fun. Like you've got the Han Solo lines, but you're missing like the real soul of it. I feel like, and it's hard to explain that. And I don't know. I feel like it's hard to explain, and so therefore it's like hard to accuse it of being bad for this reason. But at the same time, it's like that's how I feel about this movie, and so like I don't know. It's hard to, I guess, prove that it's bad for this reason, but at the same time, I feel like you shouldn't have to prove it because it's art. So I kind of have conflicted feelings about that, I guess. But moving on with the actual chronological order thing, then the Rathtars escape, which, to be fair, a lot of people say Rey is a Mary Sue. She let the Rathtars escape instead of locking the doors shut. Which, to me, okay, just because she makes a mistake doesn't mean she's not overpowered in other situations. And I'll get to more of Rey's overpoweredness later. But I feel like at this point, she's just been a good character. But that doesn't mean that when they make mistakes with writing her character, or at least what I perceive as mistakes, that those aren't mistakes, or at least what I perceive as mistakes. If anything, it just makes the contrast more. Because, I mean, if she was powerful and always perfect, like, you can tell a good story with that. Like, I don't know. There are ways to do that. And obviously they didn't do that with the rest of the movies. But there is ways to make basically someone who's perfect a very compelling character. Or at the very least, make the other characters around them even more compelling. One example of this is Azula from Avatar The Last Airbender. Because she's so perfect, and not in the same way Rey is. She's not morally perfect, as well as, like, super talented. But Azula is super talented. And it makes the character of Zuko so much more compelling. And it makes him one of the greatest characters, like, of all time. I mean, there's probably a lot of greatest characters of all time, but he's one of them, for sure. And it even makes the other characters like Ty Lee and May, and even, like, to some extent, Katara and Toph, and even Aang. Maybe not Aang. Aang's also kind of in that boat. Yeah, Aang kind of makes Katara a cool character, and Sokka as well. It's not that the other characters are perfect or extremely talented like Azula, but they are benders, and Sokka is not a bender. Therefore, his character becomes more compelling because he's overcoming his weaknesses. So those are just a few examples of how you can make a Mary Sue style character work for your story. Unfortunately, the sequels don't really do that. And I'm guessing they just weren't really trying to write a Mary Sue style character, or I guess an overpowered character. Now there's some things they did that kind of make me think that they were, but at the same time, those could be decisions made in a committee, not made by like the actual writers, and it's like you have to make them do this because we want it to look good, and it's like, as a lot of people say, it's just the suits making decisions and not actually the actual storytellers, which I don't know how true that is, and I don't really want to just point fingers and say all rich people are bad or whatever and stuff. But at the same time, I feel like to some extent it does feel like there is some amount of Disney playing it safe here and making sure that certain things are in the movie, um, especially considering that the main critique of this movie that people most often say is it's pretty much episode 4, which is the first Star Wars movie. It's a pretty safe bet to copy that. But at the same time, it doesn't really copy that in too much of the book. Like at this point, it's not really the same plot. Like you have Rey was on Jakku and Luke was on Jakku, but like what happened to Rey's parents dying or Luke's parents dying? Like the parallel there, like there is none. Yeah, like I mean, if you go scene by scene, it doesn't parallel until like the end, which every story has a climax, and then yeah, like it parallels in the ways that most stories parallel. And again, I've covered this a bit earlier, but the way I think it parallels most is with its weapons and technology, especially. I mean, it's just the rebellion versus the Empire again. Like, come on, guys, be more creative. But yeah, I digress. Let's move on to what happens next. Then they get to Takodana, and you get another great scene. Actually, I think this is where the movie starts to, I guess, degrade. It's still good. There's a lot of mystery. Okay, so at this part, I think what's keeping it alive is that there's a lot of mystery and there's a lot of stakes. You're kind of invested in. I should say at this point you would be invested in the story of the main characters and getting BB-8 back to the First Order, or not the First Order, back to the rebellion. So I mean you're pretty invested in what's going on, but there's also mysteries being set up. With Luke's lightsaber and Rey touches it. Finn leaves, which, like, that's a big development. It shows his, like, I guess where his character's at, that he's willing to leave. Basically, Maz Kanata, they're just taking a break and, like, explaining character motivations and creating mysteries for the sequels, which ended up not being covered, which is a big reason why this movie is disappointing in hindsight. Especially that vision, like that whole vision, like what is it there for? Like why would you add a vision if you don't have a plan for what the vision is going to be done? Like you showed the Knights of Ren, you showed Luke's temple burning. Why is this connected to Rey? Like we don't know. Basically the only conclusion I can draw from that, in hindsight, of course, is that Rey is force sensitive and is Jedi or going to be a Jedi. Like that's about it. And she's gonna fight Kylo Ren in the snow, and she got left on Jakku by someone who we don't know. But I digress again, because the next scene is actually pretty cool. And that's the battle between the First Order and the Resistance. And this is actually a really cool battle. I'm surprised people don't talk about this one as much, because like the First Order shows up and it like all seems lost. You get Han Solo talking about Chewie's bowcaster, which he did use earlier in the movie, by the way, against Kanji Club and whatever the other guys were. He used it right before they, what do you call it? Right before they opened the door to go into the hangar where the Millennium Falcon was. Sorry, my mind just goes blank sometimes when I'm live streaming. But anyways, Han Solo uses Chewie's bowcaster, which I'm surprised he's never used before. In fact, he does use it before, so I'm surprised he just hasn't noticed before. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Then you get, I guess I don't like this part, Finn's fight against the Stormtrooper with the absolutely horrendous weapon that just goes to show how incompetent Finn is, that he can't beat that guy when he has a sword and that guy has whatever the heck that thing is. I have made not exactly that weapon, but like I've made something like that. It doesn't work at all. It's terrible. You have no reach. Like your leverage is just awful. this spinning thing, like, what is it even there for? Like, I don't really know. And even when the guy does hit Finn, it doesn't even kill him. So that weapon is just terrible all around. Like, it's so bad. And he, like, right before he attacks Finn, he throws away a blaster and a shield. Like, sure, his shield would do probably nothing against a lightsaber, but he could have just shot Finn. Like, what in the world? Why is he doing all this? It's ridiculous. So yeah, and Finn is using a melee weapon, not doing too well. He picks up a blaster and immediately takes out like 3 stormtroopers. It's actually pretty great. I do like that scene because, I mean, he's a stormtrooper. He should be good with a blaster. Stormtrooper and main character, obviously. So he should be good with a blaster. Then we also get Rey, and there is that part where she forgets about the safety, which, great scene. Great callback to earlier. But, yeah, she gets tracked down by Kylo Ren, and we really get to see what it's like to fight someone when you have a blaster and they have a lightsaber, and it doesn't look fun. It's like shooting a wall. Like, it's just useless. And then, of course, Kylo Ren uses the Force to Force freeze her, which, again, I love that power. Then, after freezing her, he uses the Force to knock her out, which a lot of people don't talk about this power, even though I believe this is the first time we see this power in the movies, just Force knockout, basically. However, we do see this power in the Clone Wars with the Night Sisters, which, I don't know, I feel like there's a theory there to be made, a connection between Kylo Ren and the Night Sisters, and perhaps between Snoke as well. But then again, Snoke is made by Palpatine. I don't know, I feel like there's a connection there between those, like, all those different characters. So, I don't know, leave your theories about that if your mind gets triggered in the chat or in the comments. More likely the comments, because not many people watch these live, but oh well, I guess tune in not next week, 2 weeks from now. Yeah, anyways, moving on to, right, okay, so here's another thing I don't like, and it's the same thing. Rey is getting brought into Kylo Ren's ship, which, by the way, is pretty cool that she gets captured. Not many times does the main character get captured by the villain in, like, the first movie. It happens all the time in the second one, but not the first one. But in this case, it does actually happen in the first movie. And here's the problem, though. Finn sees Rey getting captured, and he's like, "No, Rey!" And it's like, why are you yelling Rey? You barely know her. And then he runs up to Han Solo and is like, "Did you see Rey got captured? Like, I'm insane. Oh, what just happened?" And Han's like, yeah, kid. And it's like, Han is like pretty much the audience at this point. And there's a scene later I'm going to talk about where Han is definitely the audience. Yeah, he's like, yeah, kid, I know. It's like he just saw, and obviously Han immediately took a liking to Rey, which makes sense. She's pretty talented. Like you said, he could use a good crew member. And Chewie seems to like her. So Han obviously likes her, but he's not like screaming about it because he's Han, right? And Finn, I don't know, he just shouldn't be so attached to Rey when he's been a stormtrooper all his life. Like, what in the world? Like, his character just doesn't make sense. But yeah, I digress about that. That's the third time I've said I digress, and wow, I barely know what that word means. But yeah, then and this is where I feel like the story kind of right after the scene, because this is actually a cool scene, and that's the scene where Leia meets up with Han for the first time, and they're kind of standing there, and then C-3PO is like, "Hello, it's Han Solo. What in the world? And you probably don't recognize me because of the red arm," which is a great line, and it's such a C-3PO thing to say. Man, that red arm just makes him like a whole new person. But anyways, that scene it has mixed feelings for me, because one, it kind of just shows that they Han and Leia left each other. Like, that seems so out of character to me. Like, why would they leave each other? It's fine to make your characters flawed, like the mentor characters, or it's fine if the characters from the original trilogy are flawed, but making them leave each other, like, I feel like that's just, they're just giving up, right? They shouldn't do that. It's it's not that it's out of character for Han Solo to go smuggling, but it's out of character for him to leave Leia. Um, like, I don't know. I don't like it. But and it's not like I don't like it in like the way like I don't like when Anakin turns to the dark side and kills younglings, or I don't like it when I see, um, I guess what's a really sad death scene when I see, Fives, like his death scene, and like him slowly going insane and getting manipulated by Sidious, and then finally he dies. And it's not in the same way that I don't like when Ahsoka leaves the Order. It's it's just kind of a disappointment. It's like that's not Han Solo. That's not Leia. Like, how can they do that? Um, but yeah, I mean they I guess have a decent scene. Like the reunion is great, but the fact that there has to be one isn't, and so that's why there's mixed feelings for me. But anyways, then they go back to the Resistance base, and Han has some good lines. Poe returns. Oh, by the way, I was gonna talk about the Battle of Takodana more. Um, for one, the setting, I really like the setting. Um, that planet, that's a really cool looking planet. Um, two, the castle is awesome. That's another part of the setting. And as it gets destroyed, the rubble is also pretty cool to fight in. But beyond that, there's also the music as the resistance comes in. That's some epic music. That, like, wow, it just gets my blood pumping. And then there's Poe as a pilot. That scene where he takes out like 4 TIE fighters in a row is just awesome. I love it. But yeah, that's all I have to say about the Battle of Takodana. Back to where I was just a second ago on the Resistance base on Dakar, I believe. Um, it's it's a decent scene, but then we find out about Starkiller Base, and it's another Death Star, but bigger. And this is probably the biggest problem I have with this movie is Starkiller Base, and the fact that it's just another Death Star but bigger, and it gets blown up after the first movie. Um, and it's actually worse than the Death Star because its lasers, like, take, like, what they travel to the New Republic instantly, like, and yet Kylo Ren is watching them like travel across his transparent steel window. They should be just like boom in a flash past him, and then like yet still take years and years to get to the New Republic system because this is space. They're so far away. Like the Death Star had a hyperdrive. Starkiller Base doesn't. And then the other problem with Starkiller Base not having a hyperdrive is it sucks up stars, which one, that doesn't make any sense. How does it suck up stars? Um, but two, even if it could, let's say this is a binary star system, kind of rare, but they occur. I don't know if there's any systems with 3 stars, but I think actually there was a Thrawn book or something. Maybe the most was 4. I don't know if it was a Thrawn book. I believe it mentioned in some book that the most was 4. But anyways, it doesn't have a hyperdrive. You get 1, 2, 3, maybe at most 4 shots with this thing, and then all your work here, which by the way has been going on since the start of the Empire, then all your work there is gone. You get 4 shots. Sure, that's 4 star systems, but you build a Death Star, which by the way took less time, because we see that the Starkiller Base is already being started on in what do you call it, Jedi Fallen Order, which is over 30 years ago. The Death Star did not take that long to build. It took, well, I suppose I should do a video about that, or at least a segment about that. You know what? I'm going to do a segment about that right now. Take that. So, the first Death Star, we see its designs in Episode 2. And so it's probably been in development for at least 5 years before then, because we see a pretty conclusive design at that point. And, like, it's not like some sketch they have. It seems pretty extensive. So I'd say about 5 years before then is when the Death Star project started. Just to be safe, let's say 1 year before then. Um, so 1 year before then another like 4 years in the Clone Wars, so that's 5 years. Then you have 20 years until A New Hope, which is when it's finished. So that's 25 years for the first Death Star. Then between episodes 4 and 6, I believe it is 4 years. It's about 5 years. I don't know how much it is, but that means that they built the entirety of the second Death Star in a fifth of the time they built the first Death Star. Unless they started the second Death Star before the first Death Star, in which case Sidious has way too many contingencies and he's spending way too much on these Death Stars, or maybe he wants to build an entire fleet of them. I don't know, which I guess he does in Rise of Skywalker, kind of, but that's not the point. The point is the timeline doesn't really make sense quite with this. There's also the fact that he started Starkiller Base during the time of the Jedi Fallen Order, which clearly means he wasn't satisfied with just one Death Star. So he probably wasn't satisfied with two Death Stars, or a Death Star and Starkiller Base. He probably had a second one. So I'm guessing the second one didn't take 5 years to build, and it took, I don't know, 20 years to build or something. But yeah, I mean, what does he need all these super weapons for? Like, he already has the Death Star. Tarkin and that other guy seem to think that would be enough. So I don't know. That's quick. Just look at the timeline of when Death Stars were started and built and all that stuff. But yeah, moving on past Starkiller Base, which I gotta say, I do like the name Starkiller Base. It's a cool name. Cool character name, which they copied it from. But at the same time, it's a cool name for a space station, or I should say a super weapon. Because it's not really a space station, it's a planet. But it is a super weapon. It's kind of weird. Yeah, moving on from Starkiller Base, great name. You get to, I believe, right, okay, so basically this is the climax, where Han Solo infiltrates Starkiller Base, and I do gotta admit, how he entered the shields does make a bit of sense. I do wish they would have. So okay, so it is technically possible that he did that without the Force, but I do wish that, like it's not very likely that he'd be able to do that with the Force. That he'd be able to time it. So he at least should have had a timer that would show him about when to pull out of hyperspace, because he's moving faster than the speed of light, and hyperspace is kind of this super soft magic system. I mean, technically it's not magic, but whatever. It's just an unexplained system. It's very soft. We don't know the rules about it, and I like it that way. I do not think that hyperspace should be explained, very much, if at all. Obviously, there's some things you have to explain, but for the most part, it should be kind of mysterious, I guess, and unexplained. Because the more you try and explain faster than light travel, outside of some explanations I've read, which are super interesting and probably wouldn't work in real life, but they're cool as books. But anyways, the more you try and explain faster than light travel, I think the less cool it is. And I think hyperspace is that same way. You shouldn't really explain it, but at the same time, it doesn't really make sense, given the rules that I know, that he would be able to time it just right, because he's moving faster than the speed of light. So I don't know. I feel like there's, at the very least, they should have made sure to make him come at the planet at an angle, I guess. Or not at an angle. Here's what I mean. So instead of going towards the planet and going so that if you don't stop in time, you hit the planet, go at the planet on a tangent to the surface, a bit above that, but still in the atmosphere, so that if you miss, if you overshoot, you will end up not going into the planet, but going past the planet. Does that make sense? So you don't pass through the Earth, you pass through the atmosphere, though. And I feel like if you do that, then it's a lot safer, and that just basically makes your ship cooler. Or it just makes it makes it seem less like, oh, Han Solo's so lucky, and it's like, oh, Han Solo's kind of smart, at the same time also very daring, and also he got lucky, so there's that too. The other problem with that is that the sensors on Starkiller Base would undoubtedly sense the Millennium Falcon popping into hyperspace or crashing into trees or all that. And there is that one line, if we fly any higher, they'll spot us. But it's like, they should spot them anyways. Usually, to avoid stuff like that, they like turn off all their electronics, which makes a bit of sense, especially in space when distances are like so far. It's like a speck is a star destroyer. So yeah, there's a lot to critique there, but at the same time, I'm not super bothered by it, despite all the things I talk about. In fact, I guess to some extent it's kind of fun to try and explain away some of these seemingly inconsistent things. But then we get to the part where I think Rey begins to become a Mary Sue. And I feel like Mary Sue might be the wrong word. Just begins to use powers that she has no right to use because she hasn't earned it through training and screen time, I guess, because there is a lot of plot armor in Star Wars, despite what I would like, which, yeah, I'll maybe cover that in a future episode, but, yeah, so Kylo Ren comes to infiltrate Rey, and he thinks that she has the map to Skywalker, and he's right, or at least she has part of it, and he infiltrates her mind, figures out a lot about her, but doesn't figure out the map. But then she infiltrates his mind and scares him off, which I don't think she should be able to do. Kylo Ren is the son of a Skywalker. Like, clearly he is very powerful. The Skywalkers have this special thing where everyone in their family is super powerfully strong in the Force. And that's not the case for most Force sensitives. But for the Skywalkers, that is true. Or at least I don't think it's the case for most Force users. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. But the point is that Kylo Ren is pretty strong with Force, or at least he's supposed to be. And maybe he's not. Maybe in this movie he wasn't supposed to be, but I feel like he was kind of set up to be super strong with the Force. And in The Last Jedi, it's mentioned a few times how powerful he is. Naturally, of course, because they tell us that he's powerful, but they don't show us. But anyways, what was I going to say? Rey should not be able to beat Kylo Ren, even if Rey had 10 times more talent than him. Kylo Ren has over a million times more training than her because she doesn't have any training. She thought the Force was a myth until like earlier that day. I don't know if it's a day, but whatever. Earlier in the movie, like she thought the Force was a myth. She wasn't like training with it, whereas Kylo Ren had been training with it since he was a kid. Like not as young as Obi-Wan, but as young as Anakin, I would think. I believe in the comics he's like a teenager and he's like leaving the Jedi Order with leaving Luke's Jedi Order. But he's been trained for a long time. He should be much stronger than her. And yet there Rey is beating him. And even Snoke is surprised. He's like, the scavenger resisted you? And then, yeah, so I just feel like that is where it starts. And that's where Rey is starting to just be too powerful for, like, why is she so powerful? And I guess, I don't really know. I feel like it kind of serves the story in that they couldn't have the First Order go there. But I feel like if the First Order did figure out where Luke was, it would be a more interesting story. By the way, I'm going to have a really long rant at the end about Luke Skywalker and the map and all that. But yeah, anyways. Yeah, I'll probably talk about that a bit at the end, if I remember. But yeah, after that, though, Rey uses the Jedi mind trick. Like, why is she using a Jedi mind trick? How does she even know about that powerful? And believe it or not, in the novel, there is, like, an explanation where she basically, when she was in Kylo's mind, she downloaded his training so that now she just has it, and has all his moves and she can do them because that's how training works. After all, when I go to wrestling practice and my wrestling coach shows me a move, I can do it instantly, perfectly, really quickly, right? Unfortunately, that's not how it works. You can't just download training. Just because you know in your head how to do something doesn't mean you can do that like in your nervous system and with your muscles and all that. It takes a lot of practice. Like you can't just download training. I mean, Baymax can because Baymax is cool like that, but Ray's not an android, so Ray can't do that. But yeah, I just think that's such a dumb explanation. But however you explain it, Rey uses a Jedi mind trick and escapes. And why does she do this? Because the story, it's not even required by the story. It's literally because they want to make Rey overpowered because, like, she's a girl. Like, I don't know. That's the only explanation I can think of. It's like, oh, Rey's a girl. We need to make her a strong female character. It's like, no, just serve the story. She gets captured, and have her help escape, like Leia. Like Leia was captured. Luke goes in. He's like, I'm here to rescue you. And then she rescues him. She's like, you didn't have a plane to escape? Jumps in trash compactor. Like, that's a strong female character. You don't need them to have unexplained powers like a Jedi mind trick. Especially when you already have Finn and Han Solo and Chewie coming into the thing. And then there's the problem of Finn and Chewie and Han. They come into the base. It'd be a lot easier to find her if she was locked in a cell somewhere where they could look it up. But because she escaped, no one knows where she is. And how is it that the literally three, by the way, they're all in one group, but the three main characters in one spot managed to spot Rey before the entirety of the First Order, all those stormtroopers, Kylo Ren, who is force sensitive and can sense her, and cameras. Don't forget cameras, because I'm sure that Star Wars has invented cameras, considering they have holograms. How can they not find Rey before Han Solo and Finn and Chewie can? It's ridiculous. But anyways, they do. Whatever, I'll have to accept it. And the space fight ensues. It's not really a space fight, and I kind of mentioned this earlier. I actually like this aerial battle. Somewhat, at least. It's cool. It's flashy. You have Poe Dameron again. He's always fun to watch. Just seeing him pilot around is just incredible. But at the same time, and also how it gets darker and darker, that's pretty cool. The one problem I do have is that the other pilots don't seem to have much personality. They're kind of just the pilots of the Resistance. And the other problem is we've seen things like this all the time. We see it in the original Star Wars movie. We see it in Episode 6. We see it in Episode 1. And we see it throughout the Clone Wars. Space fights are pretty common, and this is a pretty standard one. It's the X-Wings against the TIE Fighters, and they blow up the big super weapon at the end. But then there's also the 2 more scenes to talk about. 3 more, I guess. 4 more. There's 4 more scenes to talk about. Starting with number 1, and that is Chewie and Han go in to place the charges to let Poe Dameron into shoot stuff. But the most important part of this is Han Solo's death. And this is something that Harrison Ford had been looking forward to for a long time. And for his sake, I'm glad he got it. I wonder how much they paid him in Rise of Skywalker. But anyways, this scene was really good. I liked it. It's touching. It shows that Han Solo truly cares, but he doesn't know how to care. Which is an interesting concept that they explore a lot in Life Debt, I think they talk about it in Life Debt. Or maybe they explored in the novels a bunch. What's that one called? Last Shot? I believe they touch on it in that one as well. That he just doesn't know how to be a dad. Which makes a lot of sense for his character, and I love that they have that element of it in there. And that all stems from The Force Awakens, I think. I didn't really pay attention when things came out, because I read the books after, but anyways, I digress on that point. This is a good scene. The lighting is awesome. Like, Rey and Finn pop in the upper door, and you have this beam of sunlight showing down, and then right before the death, a cloud covers the sun, and it's only the red light, no more white light. And that's great cinematography. It's a bit confusing as to what happens with, like, does Han Solo kill himself? Like, does Kylo Ren kill him? Like, what exactly is going on there? And I'd love to, like, ask J.J. Abrams, what was your intent? And I wonder if, because that is important. Like, if Han Solo killed himself, then he's keeping Kylo Ren in the light. Basically, he's not letting Kylo Ren taint himself with the dark side of killing his own father, and that would make Kylo Ren a lot more conflicted. It could be what brought him back to the light. It would make that scene in the Rise of Skywalker with Han Solo even better. Then there's also what if Kylo Ren does kill Han Solo, or what if that was him? And then there's also what did Kylo Ren mean when he said, what did he say? He said, basically, I need your help. I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. Like, what did he mean? Did he mean, I need help to kill you, and then Han Solo kills himself, and then that makes sense? Or, I need your help to kill you, and then Han Solo just lets it happen, or whatever. I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns in that, and I feel like that it still works. And yeah, the expressions on Han's face were good. The expressions on Kylo Ren's face were good. Rey's scream was a bit overdone, I think. After all, she didn't know Han that much. But at the same time, like, she should be shocked and saddened by his death. I guess I would say more like Finn was than her. I don't even want to try and copy it because it was just such a scream. I don't know. Then there's Chewie's reaction, which I thought was awesome. On the other hand, Kylo Ren would certainly be dead. Which there's a lot of people who should die near this ending. In fact, pretty much everyone. Okay. Kylo Ren should die. Finn should die. Ren or Rey. Kylo Ren. Yeah, Kylo Ren should die. Finn should die. Who else should die? I guess that's it. But Rey kind of should die. I'll get to that. I'll get to that now because I'm pretty much done talking about the Han Solo and Kylo Ren scene. Finn and Rey run away. That rhymes. And they get confronted with Kylo Ren. Which, actually, where were Finn and Rey going? Did they get lost? I'm confused. Because they kind of just ended up in the forest somewhere. Kylo Ren steps out, confronts them, and Chewie's not there. Chewie went out the bottom door. Why did they go in the top door? I'm a bit confused about what Rey and Finn were thinking now. But honestly, it doesn't really matter too much. There's a lot more to critique in Star Wars than where Rey and Finn were going at this point in time. It's easy to nitpick Star Wars. There's so much. It's kind of sad. But anyways, Kylo Ren confronts them, and he should be dead now. But I guess he's still standing, and he seems fine. Other than the fact that he's punching his wound and it's bleeding. I guess he's wearing armor, which makes sense. We see in the second Thrawn book, what is it called? Thrawn Alliances, that the Chiss have like some sort of cloth armor for their uniforms, which is cool. I mean, it's not 100% perfect. Like, blaster wounds still affect him, but he survives getting hit with blasters. It's pretty cool. More effective than the Stormtrooper armor, by the way. Crazy. But yeah, I mean, Kylo Ren probably has some armor, so that's probably the best explanation I have for it. That, and of course, the dark side. Maul survives getting cut in half, so the dark side wields many abilities some considered beyond natural. Boom. That's enough explanation for the fans, I guess. Right. But anyways, Kylo Ren immediately takes out Rey with a simple force push, which, perfect. He should, because you know what? He has training and she doesn't. That is what I would expect. If Vader fought Luke in A New Hope, that's what I would expect. So, bravo. But then Finn fights Kylo Ren, and it's clear Kylo Ren is toying with him. It's clear he's angry at him. He yells traitor. And by the way, that's a good yell. I can't do that. these actors are great. Which is something I do want to touch on. All these actors, they're really good. Like the amount, especially in The Last Jedi, the amount of emotion that Rey and Kylo can convey is really good. And Finn and Poe. They're just so like charismatic in their own way. Um, I love seeing these guys act. And then of course there's Harrison Ford, who again very charismatic. There's Leia or Carrie Fisher. I get the two mixed up sometimes. But anyways, there's Carrie Fisher, who again is a great actor. Can display lots of emotion. There's all these guys. You've got Chewbacca, who can like convey so much without ever saying a word. And then you've got stormtroopers who again without saying a word. And yeah, they're not the front and center actors. They don't have a big part, but at the same time, they look like stormtroopers. They look pretty natural. And that's kind of if they don't stand out, that's their job. It's the job of CGI. It's the job of extras, and stormtroopers do a great job of that. And so does the CGI in this movie, by the way. So, yeah, that's what I have to say about the acting in this movie. It's all really good. There was one scene where I thought it looked. Oh, it was right after Rey and Finn survive the TIE Fighter chase in the Millennium Falcon. Like the first time Rey flies the Millennium Falcon, and they like walk up to each other and they say all these things to each other, and it's like hard to tell what's going on because they're talking over each other basically. And then they both at the same time stop, pause, and turn to BB-8, and it's like, yeah, that was scripted. Yep, that took me out of the movie. And that's the only one I noticed on this run through that it was like, yeah, and that was scripted. Yep, totally. This is a movie, but yeah, back to. I go on so many tangents, but back to the forest with Kylo Ren versus Finn. It was awesome. Like he's clearly toying with Finn, and then he pushes Finn against the tree, and Finn's got like no leverage. He's like trying to push Kylo Ren's blade away, and Kylo Ren is like slowly inching his blade forward and touches his shoulder with the crossguards, and Finn's like screaming, and that is how I want Kylo Ren to be. Those crossguards, man, those are awesome. And I think I've talked about these before in my video about different lightsaber hilts, but crossguards are so helpful, especially with knives, but that's not the point. The point is swords. Like they protect your hands, and then it's that they're actually effective. It's great. And lightsaber crossguards are even better. Okay. You might cut off your hand with one, but if you're careful, they're even better. Because you might cut off your hand, but you could also do what Kylo Ren does in this movie and kind of just, if you get in a bind, just push your hand forward and stab him with the crossguard. It's awesome. I love it. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that fight. And then pretty quickly. The other thing I have to say is that Finn should definitely be dead. But I've already said that. I'll probably say it again in The Last Jedi. I'll probably say it again at the end of the movie or at the end of the review. I don't know how many times I'll say it, but Finn got sliced in the back. It actually looks pretty deeper than I thought on this second watch. It's like right across the spine. He should totally be dead. Then there's what is it? Kylo Ren is like force pulling the lightsaber and is like struggling to pull it. And this is, at this point, and I don't remember if I noticed this the first time I watched it, but at this point, whenever I watch the movie, I'm sort of cringing because he shouldn't struggle that much with a lightsaber. And yes, I guess it's a special lightsaber, but like, why is it special? Like, it wasn't made especially different. It's a pretty standard design. So why is it treated special? Maybe the kyber crystal has something to do with it, like because it has bonded with so many different people. But I don't know. It seems weird to me. But anyways, he's struggling to pull it out, and then it flies out, and then there's another problem. As Mark Hamill has pointed out, it totally should have flown into Luke's hand, but it flies into Rey's hand, and then Rey fights Kylo Ren, and the battle goes actually very well. The choreography is great. But Kylo Ren is on-focused, he's overswinging, but at the same time he's dominant. And that's how I think he should be portrayed in combat. Because, I mean, that's who he is, unrefined and yet powerful. At the same time, he does have more training than Rey, so he is totally dominating the fight. And Rey is just running away. She's chopping trees, using her environment, which Rey is pretty resourceful. I can't really talk much more about that. She just is resourceful. She's grown up on Jakku. She's had a hard life. She's had to learn, had to adapt. So it totally makes sense. But then you get to the point where Kylo Ren has her in a blade lock. And by the way, I just want to point this out. Kylo Ren could kill her at this point. So I mean, like, it's not like Rey's more powerful than him. It's that she can defeat him, but he would defeat her first. I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense. But at this point in the fight, he could have done the same thing he did to Finn and just push his arms forward and hit her with his crossguard and take her out that way. Alternatively, he could at any time just use the Force on her like he did on Takodana and like he did earlier on Starkiller Base, where he threw her into the tree. But he doesn't at this point. He tells her that she needs a teacher, which she should know, but of course, being the light side person that she is, she does not fall for it, which is good. Like, if Luke felt the dark side with Vader, like, he clearly needed a teacher too, but no, he's a Jedi. So, it's not bad that she doesn't. It's just something that happens. And then she beats him, which I don't like. Like, why would you have your main character beat the villain, or the main antagonist, I should say, in the first movie? Especially if you don't have a plan, and you're... I don't even know. Like, why? There's not really any point to it. And there's no point plot-wise, because as soon as she beats him, like, the ground opens up and separates them. You could just reverse it the other way. She says no, and, like, pushes away, and I don't know, does something, overextends maybe, gets disarmed, and knocked to the ground, maybe gets a hand cut off or something, just to, I don't know, add injury to, I guess, defeat. Just to have a physical reminder of your defeat. You can use that for symbolism later too. It's pretty cool. But anyways, you could have Rey defeated, and then the ground opens up. Like, it doesn't really matter who gets defeated in this case. All that matters is that the fight is that they don't die, at least plot-wise. And then, like, character development-wise, you don't want your main character beating the main antagonist in the first movie, because then what are the stakes for the next movie if you know that they're stronger? And yes, there's the excuse that Kylo Ren had been shot by Chewie, but clearly he was fine. It doesn't slow you. Like, it doesn't slow you down. It might cause pain, but a Sith should be fueled off their pain. It might cause you to, like, I don't know, like, not be able to move your muscles in the right way and stuff, and actually, like, cause problems. But if that were happening, it would be more drastic than just suddenly being overwhelmed by Rey. It just wasn't portrayed like he lost because of the wound. It was portrayed like he lost because she used the Force, which, again, this is the other line where I think Han Solo is definitely the audience. That's not how the Force works. Yeah, so that whole fight ends kind of disappointingly for me. It just doesn't make sense. Like, why would Rey win that fight? Why would she, story-wise? Why would she logic-wise? Why would she plot-wise? Why? I don't get it. Yeah, so that's the second scene I wanted to talk about. The third one I want to talk about is they arrive back on Takodana, and you have Finn, and he survived. Like, it's revealed he survived. Like, we found a heartbeat, is something they say. All that kind of stuff. You see Chewie getting, maybe that was earlier, but the scene where Chewie is getting talked to by the one person, and he's like, and she's like, oh, that sounds very scary. You must be very brave. And he's like, yeah, I'm totally brave. It's just great because I mean he's so old, he's so experienced, and he's like there being treated like a 5-year-old. It's actually pretty cute. I don't know. I like it. It's Star Warsy to me. You have all the basic scenes like that, but the big problem, at least the big problem I have, is Leia walks right by Chewie, hugs Rey, and I don't remember what they talk about. I believe there's a giant pause before they say anything. But I think they do talk about Han Solo. Like, why would Leia talk about that with Rey rather than Chewie? And why not do both? I guess. But I don't know. It's just the main characters has not only plot armor, but like plot, I guess, befriending character utility. That's a weird name. But just this incredible ability to be liked by Han Solo, to be liked by Finn, to be liked by Leia, to be Chewie kind of like to be liked by Chewie. Everyone but Luke, I guess. Which to be liked by even the bad guy. Snoke even seems to admire her. Says he has the spirit of a true Jedi, which I would argue is more like the spirit of a Sith based on how she was acting. But I'll get to that next stream. But yeah, there's I don't know. Rey just has this incredible ability to be liked by everyone, which is actually one attribute of the Mary Sue, and I think it's actually one of the biggest indicators of a Mary Sue because overpoweredness can be, like I said with like Azula, can be part of your character, but if everyone just likes your character for some reason, it's kind of like, well, because you like your character and you want them to be like a Mary Sue. And if you don't know, the origin of the Mary Sue is basically the person was inspired by bad fan fiction writers and wrote basically this character that was overpowered in every way and everyone liked them and everything, like basically the person was perfect and a saint and all that stuff. So that's the origin of the Mary Sue. Obviously, if you're like a fan fiction writer and you make a character who you really like and therefore you're going to treat basically as a perfect person, one of the things that's going to happen is all the characters are going to like that person because you, the writer, like that person. So yeah, that's one of the big indicators of Mary Sue, and Rey knocks that out of the park. So yeah, there's that. But moving on to the last scene, which again, it's another disappointing one for me. But when I first saw The Force Awakens, it wasn't. And that's like the Jedi steps. Rey goes up to meet Luke Skywalker, basically. And you get to see Octu, another beautiful planet, much like Takodana. Those planets, I like that kind of planet. Just a nice planet. Lots of green. And Alderaan. Alderaan's cool, too. Alderaan's literally cool, because there's mountains and snow and stuff. But anyways, Rey shows up to Luke, hands him the lightsaber. Luke has this look in his face that's hard to read. Rey has this pleading look, I guess, like, please come. Not like I don't know. She just doesn't seem very confident. But two things I don't like about this. One, Chewie stays with the ship. Like, if it was Han Solo, yeah, Chewie stay with the ship. Yeah, that totally makes sense. But with Rey going to meet Luke Skywalker, like, why is Chewie not coming with? I don't know. It just... Why do they do this? I don't know. It's again the Mary Sue problem. Everyone likes her, I guess, and she's the one that's going to be the ambassador to Luke, not Chewie, like Chewbacca, the actual Chewbacca. Like, doesn't make sense to me. But the other problem is this spawned so many mysteries, so much debate in the fandom, and this isn't the only thing. They also hinted at Rey's parents. They hinted at Snoke, who's Snoke, all that kind of stuff. And this just exploded in the fandom with all these theories. And in the end, the explanations they gave us weren't very... They just weren't very good. Like, they were kind of just basic. Like, if you're going to tease something, like, as hard as you tease Rey's parents, the Snoke thing, I guess, wasn't teased super hard. Fans just kind of latched onto it. Which does make sense. You should predict that there's going to be some speculation about Snoke, but maybe not quite as much as there was. But then there's also the Luke theories, which you need a good explanation if you're going to make Luke do the things that he did in, or rather, not do the things that he didn't do in this movie. You also need a good explanation if you're going to tease Rey's parentage so much, and there just wasn't. Um, like, I don't know, like, I don't know what they were thinking when they didn't come up with a plan. And it's just one of these things that's like, boggles my mind. Why would you make that decision? It doesn't make any sense to me. But yet again, I digress. Now we want to talk about the whole map problem. So Luke goes to Ahch-To because he doesn't want to be found. So why does he leave a map? Why does he leave it with Loras and Tekka, or wherever Loras and Tekka got it? Why does he leave one with the First Order? Why does he leave one with BB-8? Like, what in the world? And here's a few explanations, or at least the explanation I can come up with. The map wasn't to him, it was to the First Jedi Temple, which should definitely have been how they explained it, and they just knew that Luke was looking for the First Jedi Temple, which would have given him a reason to go there, other than, well, I gave up on life, so I went to here instead of the fighting, I guess, or trying to fix my problems. I just went to this island in the middle of nowhere, or rather, island where there happens to be the First Jedi Temple. But anyways, that would have given him a reason to go there, where he's like trying to do something there, which there's a lot of things you can do there, which I would hope they wouldn't go too far with that. I'm kind of, I guess, conservative in how much I want them to show about the Force and stuff, especially because I don't really trust the writers of the sequels. Like, I would trust if Dave Filoni was going to do something like that. And maybe a few of the High Republic writers, but J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson, not so much. They would need to prove themselves with a TV show or, like Dave Filoni has gone through the entire Clone Wars. He's been mentored by George Lucas. I trust him. But, yeah. I don't know. But anyways, so the whole map thing. So if the map is to him, then how do they know that it was to Luke? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would you? And the other problem is they didn't have a plan. If you're going to put Luke on this island, if you're going to have maps to him and all that kind of stuff, then why in the world, why don't you have a plan for something as strange as that? It just doesn't make sense. Then there's the whole problem of how to get the maps. BB-8 has one, and then R2-D2 wakes up as soon as Star Killer Base is destroyed for some reason and has the other. It's very much Deus Ex Machina. It's just, wow, we need the other side of the map. Well, the main plot ended. Now you unlock it. It, like, why? It's just randomly, now you can move on because you finished the first level. But it's not connected. The two objectives don't flow into each other. They just, one flows this way and the other one suddenly gets unlocked for no reason. I don't know if that whole explanation made any sense. But one last thing I want to touch on considering these maps, and that is the fact that it doesn't make any sense why you would need a map with more than one planet. Literally, all you need is a map with named systems and a name. Ahch-To. Maybe Ahch-To doesn't show up on any maps. But, like, the other thing is they say, oh, like the map that BB-8 had, this map doesn't match up with any star charts. Like, how? How does it not? It exists, right? So it must line up with one of your star charts. I don't know. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Because surely you would have a map of the entire galaxy. Therefore, you should be able to figure out where this fits in the entire galaxy. or at least it should fit somewhere, if not multiple places. I don't know. It's weird. And like, there's that orange line on the whole map, and like, why do you need to show his path? I'm assuming that's his path because everything else is blue. Why do you need to show his path about how he got there? Just like light up the planet he's on red, like they do in the Clone Wars. When they have maps of the thing of the galaxy. But I think that's actually it for my review. I went almost an hour and a half, which I am just amazed by. Apparently, The Force Awakens has a lot of opportunity to talk about it. Hence the 2 years between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi being filled with theories and stuff. But even now, there's a lot to talk about, which is kind of surprising considering it's the movie that pretty much everyone just says, oh, that's a copy of A New Hope. But still, there's a lot to talk about with this. So, since there's so much to talk about, tell me your thoughts in the chat or in the comments of this here video. And with that, I think that's all I have left to say. So, feel free to leave any critiques, compliments, and questions you have about the video and about Star Wars. And may the Force be with you, always.